Hey, what's going on, everybody? Everybody, come on in, come on in, come on in to the True Blue Podcast. I'm your host, Blue, and we are live right here once again with a great show. Once again, I have with me Mr. Dean Fox coming with a wonderful, amazing story. Oh man, when you talk to this guy, his story just gives you the chills to know how far he has came along in his success in his path of life. So without my further ado, let me bring into Mr. Dean Fox to the show. And also don't forget to like, share, and comment on this broadcast on today. So bring on Mr. Dean Fox into the room of the True Blue show. Here we go. Mr. Dean, what's going on?
Hello there. Hi. How are you?
Oh man, doing fine, man. Once again, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come sit down and have a conversation with me and the rest of my listening audience about your unbelievable, remarkable story.
It's a real pleasure. I always say, I'm blessed and grateful every time I get an opportunity to share my story and share some value with people.
Yes, sir. So, just for everybody who doesn't know who you are, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Currently, I spend most of my time coaching and speaking. So I work mainly with entrepreneurs and business owners. I help them to end procrastination, eliminate doubt and fear, and unlock their potential, to give them the confidence and belief to be able to take the steps in their life and business, so they can go on and build, the things that they're proud of in terms of what they want to do from both a business and a life perspective. And sharing my my story is one of the things that I love to do. But that's kind of what I do right now. But it hasn't always been that way. So my background is in engineering initially, and then after that in sales and business development and marketing. But I've always been this overachiever. So I never ever felt like I was maybe good enough. I always wanted more. I was always looking for the next best thing. And so that was the same both whether I was in education or sport. I always really wanted to prove myself. I always wanted to be the best. And that transitioned into my working life and my career as well. And I was always kind of striving for the next best thing.
Yeah. So definitely, you said you was in engineering. Oh man, when I was in school at Grambling, engineering was one of the top programs that everybody wanted to be in. And I was like, man, nah, I don't care about no engineering. But now I look at engineering like, man, they're making all the money.
Yeah, well, it's funny because when I was in engineering, so I was a materials engineer. I worked in the steel industries and things like that, and some of the steel construction. But in those days, I was looking at everybody else in the commercial world, so the sales and marketing and business development teams, and thinking, man, they're making all the money. That's where I want to be. So I transitioned out of engineering into there because I saw that as being the way to success.
Yeah, definitely. So the different speaking topics that you have, touch bases on the different topics that you have that apply to your life with the different topics that you have.
Yeah, so I talk a little bit about various things. One of them is just that I share my story as part of everything that I do. But I talk a few things. So one of my keynotes is about releasing the mental handbrake. So one of the things that I really discovered for myself that I really struggled with, and I help other entrepreneurs and business owners with now, is that I always felt like I was capable of more. I always felt like I had more to give, but I felt like I was driving a car with a handbrake on. I just felt like I just couldn't make that transition. I couldn't go fast enough. Things just didn't seem to happen the way they should, as if I had some block. So that's one of the areas that I talk about a lot around sharing, unlocking what I believe is our number one asset, which is essentially the mind, the 6 inches between our ears. I talk a lot about the fact that most people are 6 inches from success. It's just that the 6 inches are between their ears. And I work with people to try and help them unlock that. So that's kind of one of the things that I talk about specifically. The other one is I talk about, I have a keynote that I call the 5-year-old CEO. And the idea behind that came from this idea that most of our belief system most of the things that we believe about ourselves are developed usually by the time we're about 5 or 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is that, you know, when you get into business or when you've got a career and you're older, if you ever asked a business owner or an entrepreneur if they would take advice in their business or their life from a 5-year-old, most people would laugh at you and say, well, no,
yeah, definitely.
Absolutely not. But actually they do on a daily basis. It's their 5-year-old self that's defining what they think is possible and what they can and can't do in their life. Yeah. And so I talk a lot about this idea that, you know, you wouldn't take advice from a 5-year-old in your business, yet you do every day in your day-to-day life. So that's kind of another aspect of what I talk about. And then the third and final one often is I have a keynote that I talk about what's called the catastrophe cycle. Mm-hmm. And it's this idea that, you know, we very quickly as individuals, we catastrophize things. We go from a very simple potential obstacle or issue to, you know, the world collapsing. And you know, we do that on a daily basis. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. Like, you know, we take the current pandemic, you know, even within a few days of that happening, you know, people were talking about, you know, this could be the end of the world. You know, businesses could collapse. The economy would be destroyed. You know, we're all talking about the worst possible scenarios in some of these cases, but we do that individually on a day-to-day basis. And it's this idea that you know, it's not the individual thought or the issue that starts it. It's all our thinking about what that could happen. You know, what the what if scenario. And I liken it to this idea of you know, being in a washing machine. We get caught up in this cycle and we recycle the thoughts over and over and over again, and then you know, it becomes worse. We feel worse about the situation, and that drives us to a point where we make irrational decisions sometimes simply because we're caught up in this whirlwind of thinking about things that haven't really happened yet. There's no way of knowing if that's going to be the case.
Yeah. So dealing with the catastrophic cycle, you know, I was reading also and talking with you about, it was a time where you had went through a different stage where you was at the top and then automatically just blink of an eye went down. So can you explain how did that really impact you all the way around?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, I like I said, I shared with you that, you know, I was always looking. I was this overachiever. I was looking for the next best thing, and you know, I'd made it in my corporate career. I was the national sales manager for a blue chip company in the UK. I ran a sales team across the country, and so to the outside world, I had probably what was perceived to be a perfect career, a great job, and a good life. But again, I was looking for the next best thing. I still wanted to prove myself. I still didn't feel like I was good enough. And I decided that one of the things that would make me good enough, one of the things that would define my success, was if I could do that for myself, if I could leave and set up my own business and make that successful. And so in the early part of the 2000s, so about 2003, that's what I did. I left the corporate world and I started, along with my wife, we started a property development and investment company, so a real estate company in the UK, so construction and development. And you know, for the next 5 years, we grew that really well. We were hugely successful in relative terms. We had a 7-figure business by end of 2007.
7 figures.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we were riding a wave in terms of the marketplace anyway. Yeah, you know, and we got to a point where I was like, okay, this is it. We've created this level of success. It's now time to push on. We're starting to live the life that we'd hoped. And then obviously a number of things happened back to back in a very short space of time. So 2008 happened. So the financial crisis of 2008. Mm-hmm. And that really impacted us. It was almost like, particularly it affected everybody across the world, but in the UK, from an economical point of view, you know, it was like somebody turned a tap off in our business. So all of the strategies, all of the processes and systems that we used in our development were no longer available to us. And so, you know, very quickly, within a matter of days and weeks, you know, lots of the things that we were involved with started to kind of fall down around us. So we had some of the financial institutions we worked with, where we had lines of credit, were phoning us to say, There is no more credit. In fact, we want back what we loaned you already. We had developments half completed. It was just a disaster zone.
Yeah.
And there was a number of things that happened there. So that left us with some difficult decisions to make, but also some financial pressures. We started to think about how we're going to get through this. But as I said, we'd done really well for that 5-year period. So we had some savings ourselves. We put money aside. We'd invested some money. But obviously, 2008, 2009 had an impact not just in the property market, but in the global economic markets. So some of the investments that we'd made, we lost some of those. When you're not bringing in any revenue, it doesn't matter. Relatively speaking, it doesn't matter how much savings you've got. You're just bleeding money. We were just spending every month trying to stay afloat. So that wasn't going to last forever. And so amongst the financial pressures, I made a decision. I said that what we would do is I would go back for a short period of time into the corporate world. So I'd just go back and get a job, probably in sales and business development. I had some contacts still in the industries. And that would kind of steady the ship, and that would see us through the difficult time until we could rebuild. And that's what the decision we'd made in kind of late 2009. And then in early 2010, my wife and I and my youngest son at the time, we were involved in a really bad car accident. An accident that really we shouldn't have survived. We were almost killed in it. And that did two things. The first thing it did was it stopped me being able to go back into corporate world for a period of time. It took us, the best part of 12 months to recover physically. So we were, both myself and my wife were unable to work for that period of time, essentially. So that stopped that, but it also added further financial pressure because we were unable to work. So we were losing money faster than ever before. And that the third and final thing that did was that also added some more emotional stress and pressure. And as that time extended and things started not to improve but to get worse, that got worse too. And I had some really difficult decisions to make in 2010. I didn't think we were going to survive 2010 from a financial perspective and a family perspective. So we made some tough decisions. I ended up, by the end of 2010, I was bankrupt. And we'd lost virtually everything apart from our home. We managed to hold on to that. But other than that, we kind of lost everything else. And I think two things happened. One was without really knowing that and using the words and understanding it at the time, things were getting darker and darker from a mental health perspective. I started to really struggle. And I think there was two aspects of that. One is that, we're starting, I think, to break the mold a little bit, but as men, it's not something we talk about often. We're starting to hopefully change that now, and that's why I share my story openly. But that culminated the end of 2010 in December was kind of the worst time. I think probably we were approaching the Christmas, the holiday season with a young family. We'd had it really good for 5, 6, 7 years. We were facing a time when we probably couldn't have been able to do anything we would have normally done at that time. From perspective, that put extra pressure on me, not from anyone else, just from myself. And so I'd got to a point where I couldn't really see a way out. I didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. And I about 2 weeks before Christmas in early December, I'd got up on the morning and I'd said to my wife, Christine, that I was going to go out for a walk and just get some fresh air. I needed to kind of clear my head. In reality, I had no real intention of going home that day. I left in the morning. I went out for a walk. I went to some woodland near where we live. And I sat for a while. And, I'd made a decision that the world would be better off without me. My family would be better off without me, and I was gonna end my life that day. I didn't, and I could never have described at the time why I didn't. But looking back, when I actually made the decision, when I sat there and said, okay, there is no other way out than this. When I made the final decision, then there was a strange decision. There was a real peace that descended. I never felt it in before, I suppose, or never really understood it before. But I just felt really calm, really peaceful. I wasn't stressed. I wasn't worried. It's almost like the world went into slow motion. And it might only have been a few seconds, but it seemed like an age. And it gave me some time to ask some questions of myself. And one of the things that kept coming back to me was this idea that I've gone through all of this, and I could have died in a car accident 10 months ago, and I didn't. I survived that. There has to be a reason for that. There must be a purpose why I'm still here and why I'm gone through all of the things I've gone through. And if that's the case, I don't know what it is right now, but there has to be a reason, and I need to find out what that reason is. And so I did go home that day. And that started really my journey into the world of personal development and transformation. Because I got to a stage, I think, where I needed something. I was looking for something to give me some inspiration, something to kind of bring me back online, if you like, show me there's some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, definitely. I'm real grateful that, you didn't go through with committing suicide, because your story is one of a kind. It's real one of a kind, and it really just really listening to you again is really just giving me the chills, like, because you have so many people out here in the world that think that the world will be better without them, and they want to do it, but they just don't know how to do it, and then they just don't do it, and then they realize that they're here for a reason. Like you said, the car accident could have taken you out, but you're still here for a reason. And so now people have to know, keep that motivation. And I ask this all the time: what's your motivation? Figure out what is your motivation and keep moving forward. You're going to get knocked down, but it's how you get back up and keep going forward. And I often tell it to everybody: just look at my life. I got knocked down and I got right back up, and I'm still moving, still going forward, because I have that motivation to be successful, to be this wonderful, amazing guy that I always set myself out to be. And so, man, it's just crazy. So how can you, let me see, how would I want to ask this? Give someone some advice on not committing suicide. What would you tell them if somebody comes to you and say, "Hey, Mr. Dean, I'm thinking about killing myself"? What advice would you give them to keep them from not doing it?
I think the first thing for me is that, again, I looked at that day, looking back, and I know how people feel. It was like there was no light at the end of the tunnel. It was just getting darker and darker and darker. And I know how that feels. But I didn't, at the time, I didn't reach out to anybody. I was blessed that something bigger than me shared with me that there's a purpose. And one of the things I now feel is my purpose is to share with people that there is a purpose for every single person. Mm-hmm. So you might not be able to see it right now, but it's there. And you might not come across it in the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years, but you will. It will find you. People talk about, finding their passion. I don't think that's possible. I think it claims you. I think it finds you. It shows you what you're supposed to be doing. So the first thing I say to everybody is that there is always a purpose. You have a purpose. Otherwise, you would never be here in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing. The second thing is that I always share with people that for every person who's going through it, there's somebody else that you can help that's also facing it. And by not going through with it yourself and sharing that with somebody, then you not only effectively save your life, but you save somebody else.
Yes.
And so, and the third and final thing I say to everybody is we need to be talking about it more. We need to be sharing that it's okay for people to say, this is how I feel. I need some help. I need somebody to help me. I need some guidance. I need some support. I need, like I said, I was looking for some inspiration, something that would just kind of give me that idea that there was more to life than I saw at that time.
Yeah.
So they're the things I say. And my inspiration came from a book. I went back home that day and took a book from the bookshelf that I'd read before, but never really done anything with it, and I never saw half the things in it the previous times I'd read it than I did when I read it that day. And that book started my transformation. It started me to think about, wait a minute, there is more. There are opportunities. There is a reason to continue. And it was that started my journey into transformation and personal growth and development.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of men need to know that that there is help for us out there, because a lot of men, they try to hold a lot of things inside and just don't want to tell your friends or even seek help. But I think us as men need to start voicing, being more vocal with everything that we're going through, because that's a real problem with the suicide rate too, because it's coming from men and not women, because women have these different outlets they can go to, but us men, they tell us, oh, you a man, so deal with it, man up,
Yeah.
But
Yeah, absolutely. I often say that, even since I've been coaching and speaking, I would often say that, in not so much now, but certainly in my early years as a coach, about 70 or 80% of my clients who were entrepreneurs and execs and company directors were female, because they were just more open about saying, I need some support, I need some help, I'm happy to go and speak to somebody. Whereas most men, and I was exactly the same, most of us, we've got this kind of this front that we have to put on. We've been told to man up and just get
macho
on.
Man.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're afraid almost to share this vulnerability that we're not always all like that. There are times when we are impacted and affected by things, and we should be open to sharing it.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, one of the things I talk about often is this idea that when people come and say, but how did you get through that point with the way that you were thinking or the way that you were feeling? And it's difficult at the time, but now, looking back and having gone through the experiences, every emotion, every thought, they're transient. They come and go. They don't last forever.
Yep.
But what's always there is that which is aware of those thoughts and feelings, those emotions. And that's, the true self. That's where we need to focus our attention. That's what got me through, particularly in the last few years, in terms of being able to see things much more clearly, in terms of coaching, is this idea that, those things come and go. We talk about the fact that we're impacted by what we think. Well, the typical, a typical human has 60 to 90,000 thoughts a day. Most people can't tell you, what they thought 5 minutes ago, and they definitely can't tell you what they're going to think in 10 minutes time. So yet we become focused. That's what that catastrophe cycle does. We choose one of those thoughts. We say that that's more important than anything else we thought that day. And that's, we attach our emotion to that. And that's where that catastrophe cycle comes from.
Yeah. And I think more men need to start reaching out for help. It's not a bad thing. It's not, oh, you're going to be less of a man. No, because somebody else went through the same thing that you're going through. And we can get you the resources that you need to help you to succeed and not go through what you're thinking about going through.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I just think that men just need to stop being this macho man. And, because one thing that I did was I reached out, and now I have, because I never believed in, a male mentor. My male mentor was, me. I know all the answers. I know, I can answer all my problems. And so I reached out and I have 5 male mentors that hold me accountable, that make sure I'm on the right path, that make sure that I'm doing everything that I need to do. And those 5 male mentors they're all pastors. They have been there, done it. They wrote a book on it. And those 5 men hold me accountable. I hold them accountable. I tell them, hey man, you shouldn't have did that. You should never did that. They tell me the same thing. And we keep each other elevated. And we make sure that we go through our day knowing that we're going to be successful, knowing that we're going to be better today than we were yesterday. And so I encourage people to reach out to somebody that that's going to hold you accountable and going to continue to push and move you and keep giving you that motivation that you need to be successful. And that's really the biggest key thing that us men need to start thinking about and start doing, is reaching out to a person that has been there, has done that, and try to stop this vicious cycle of suicide and mental health or disorders and everything like that. Like when people go to the armed forces, they come back with PTSD and they don't know how to handle dealing with PTSD because they don't want to reach out and get the help. And I think that's the main important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the books, well, the book that I talked about earlier is a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And, in there, he talks about the mastermind principle. And it's been one of the things ever since I read that book that I've utilized, and I advise all people to utilize, is to have this group of people. And again, they don't, it doesn't necessarily have to be from a business perspective or from a personal perspective. It's just having that tight group of people who they've got your back and you've got their back. And that can be from every perspective. I've got people in my mastermind group, if you like. And then they're not just people who would just agree with everything I said and say, yeah, this is, you should do that. But they don't ever say, no, you definitely shouldn't do that. But they will say, why did you do that? Or they'll question, which just gives you enough to be able to say, right, let me reflect on that. Is that what I should be doing at this moment in time? And they also inspire you. The whole idea of having that group of people is, Napoleon Hill says you become the average of the 5 people you associate with most. That's the whole idea of the mastermind group, is you choose the people in your mastermind group that inspire you to be the best version of you.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Well, Mr. Dean, tell everybody how they can get in contact with you. If they going through something and they need somebody to speak to and they want to say, hey, how can I reach Mr. Dean? I want to just talk to him. How can they reach out to you?
So they can get me on my website, so deanafox.com. They can also get me on any of my social channels. So I'm on all the major social channels: Facebook, Instagram. Dean Fox Coaching is my handle on Instagram, and they can reach me personally directly at the website too, so they can reach out to me there.
Okay. Definitely, Mr. Dean, I would like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule out there in the UK. Man, I want to thank you for taking your time and coming on the show today and speaking with everyone. And for everyone out there, also continue to like, share, and comment on the True Blue Podcast. You have been sitting down talking with me and Mr. Dean Fox Coaching on different situations and issues. If you have any more questions, reach out to Mr. Dean or reach out to Mr. Me. I say that all the time to my son. I'm Mr. Me. Reach out to me and we'll help you all with the resources that you need dealing with mental health, suicide prevention, and just continue to help each other to be successful. And don't go down this path of depression alone. Reach out to someone that can help you. But until next time, that is all we have today. And continue to like, share, and comment on the True Blue Podcast page. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Well, it didn't. I'm waiting to end. There it is.